What's up, guys? Hey, before questions, I got to give a shout out to my wife, Jemmy. It is her 21st birthday. An amazing coach's wife of 19 years. So, honey, I know you'll listen to this and critique everything I say, everything I do, but I love you.
And with that, Corbin Smith.
Hey, Brian, you've now had 3.5 games where Chris Carson's been out. There's been plenty of debate about the overall value of the running back position in a modern NFL offense, but it's been very clear that you guys have missed him substantially out there. Where do you stand as far as how important it is to have a top 5, top 10 back of Carson's caliber on offense? And what have you seen from defenses as far as how they're playing you differently without him out there?
Well, Corbin, that's a really good question. I think I've never underestimated the value of not only one good running back, but multiple good running backs. All the great teams that I've ever been a part of, going back to the Jets and LaDainian Tomlinson, Shawn Green, Thomas Jones, Leon Washington. You can't have enough of them. And, you know, we're a little thin at that spot right now, but a player like Chris, a player like Carlos, talk about Chris. Chris can impact the game in so many ways. You know, he can beat you running the football. He can beat you catching the football. He's excellent in pass protection. Carlos, you know, he's been there, a dynamic, one-cut, really decisive runner. Another guy that can really help you in the passing game. Doing it a little bit by committee right now. That makes it hard. I think, you know, teams are trying to just, you know, test us with pressures. When you have new backs, they want to throw a bunch of stuff at you because ultimately your backs are going to get caught in one-on-one pass protection when they're bringing a lot of pressure. And I think our guys have held up. They've really grown and gotten better. Travis Homer does a magnificent job of that. DJ's gotten a lot better. It's a tough spot to be in when you're a running back and they're bringing a lot of blitzes because they're big, powerful guys running at you, and they're good athletes. And normally those guys get stuck, Corbin, in space, different than offensive linemen that are working in close quarters. They're out there in space, and there's kind of what we call two-way goes. They can go inside, they can go outside, and then they can choose speed to power. So I don't underestimate or undervalue running backs at all. I think you ask most coordinators around the league, they love to have a stable full.
Thanks.
Bob?
Yeah, Brian, just curious your assessment of Russell's game on Sunday and then sort of what you've seen from him in the couple of days since then and how he's bouncing back from that.
Yeah, you know, Bob, I think, you know, he needs to play better. He knows that. We can't turn the ball over. We started the game off really fast, you know, moved the ball right down the field in the opening drive. Played really good on third down. You know, he really did. He played really good on third down. I think we were over 50%. The turnovers, you know, he knows he has to be better with that. He knows that. Again, we coach him no different than everybody else. You know, it's non-negotiable. You have to take care of the football. There's big momentum swings. We always want to be one of the top teams in the league at taking care of the football. He's always going to be a guy that's been that way. He's normally a single-digit interception guy. And he understands that. In terms of his attitude, he's in a great spot, working hard. This is a unique week, Bob, as you can imagine, short week. Getting ready to play an opponent that we know pretty well. I think they've played 2 games since we last played them on the night game out in Arizona. But for all of us, it's just another great opportunity. You know, sometimes these short weeks when you come off of a game, the way we coached and performed, not up to our standard, it's a new opportunity, a great opportunity that we're excited about.
Jen.
DK is still one of the leading receivers in the league, but he's had a couple of quiet weeks. He had a quiet one against Arizona. Is there any need to get him going at this point, or is it just take whatever the defense is going to give you?
Well, we always want to get DK the ball. You look at DK and he gets the ball early against San Francisco. He goes on to have a monster game. You know, he's always in the plans. He's always a guy we're trying to scheme things up for. The ball doesn't always go where it's supposed to go for different reasons. But, yes, we are better when DK gets the football. He's shown what he can do, whether you throw it long, whether you throw it short, whether you just get him the ball in space. He's very, very dangerous. I think one area that DK can grow is when he is having those quiet games, to continue to work and communicate and, okay, hey, how can I solve this problem? Hey, what do you see in DK? And that's all part of growing up and continuing to mature, but he's a dynamic player that, believe me, we're always trying to get him the ball.
Joe Fan.
Brian, have you guys had a hard time getting things on schedule the last couple of weeks?
You know, Joe, without looking at the stats, it's a hard question to answer. There are times that we've been behind the sticks. I don't know. I don't know if it's behind the sticks or just there's been some areas where we just couldn't get into a flow of things. Like the second half, we just couldn't get into a flow of things. But, you know, anytime you have long yardage situations, you put yourself behind the sticks, it does make it a little bit more difficult. But without, you know, really knowing it, I guess my point is, Joe, I haven't felt like, oh my gosh, you're third and whatever, or second and whatever. I don't feel that way. But any offense is going to function better, Joe, when you can be ahead of the sticks in 2nd and 5 and 2nd and 3 and, okay, what do I want to call? I can call anything and you feel good about it. Whereas 2nd and long or 2nd and 10, 3rd and 10 makes it a little bit more difficult. But
If you
go ahead.
If you get in situations where you feel like it's scramble drill after scramble drill, or you don't have a flow, to use, I think you used the word flow. How as an offensive coordinator do you try to process that in between possessions and try to, you know, or is it just keep moving forward?
No, actually what you do, Joe, is you go back to the core plays that your players know inside and out. Maybe it's not the greatest play that draws up against this opponent or this coverage structure that they play, but it's something that guys can run in their sleep. They're like, oh, yeah, it's that play again. Russ knows where he's going. These are my different progressions. Guys are moving around. So you go to those core plays. Some of those are in your 2-minute type package plays that you'll see, plays you run each and every week, and the guys know them inside and out. I think that helps calm everybody down. Like, okay, that's a play we know. You have some success with it, and then you come through it. You always do. You always come through it. There's going to be ebbs and flows in any game, but that's the way we try to do it.
Cool, thanks, Brian.
Tim.
Hey, Brian. It feels kind of like the second half of that and overtime of the Arizona game, the pressures have kind of been dialed up, and I know they brought some unique types of pressures to you guys. What have you seen over these last 3-4 games is how you guys have handled them, and how maybe unique are some of the pressures you guys have seen during that stretch?
Each team, Tim, has been very different. Arizona was very, I'll say, exotic in terms of everybody gets up near the line of scrimmage and you're trying to figure out who's coming. Then they bring them all and they drop them all. Buffalo is a little bit different. They were going to show a safety down and bring one from other side. Everybody's got their own flavor of pressure packages that they want to show. And what happens, it's a little bit like how offenses, Tim, you copy somebody's play, you see a play, and you're like, that's really cool. We're going to try to put that in. People see a blitz, and they're like, that's pretty cool. They got a free runner on the quarterback. Let's take a look at that one. So you do see some teams repeating things that maybe we haven't handled really, really well. But it ultimately comes down to the protection unit just working together, making the calls, communicating things really well. And that's where we've been up and down. We've been up and down. There's been some really good execution. There's been some execution that hasn't been as clean. There's been some situations where I haven't really been in the right type of protection call to help us execute. And so that's where you're seeing the inconsistency, and we need to be more consistent versus those pressure looks. And we'll get plenty of chances this week, this Thursday night, to do it.
Michael Sean.
Hey, Shotty, what is Vance Joseph and Patrick Peterson doing differently on DK than everyone else?
You know, there really isn't much that they're doing, Mike. When you look at them, I mean, Patrick matches him wherever he goes. They run their deal. He didn't get stuck on DK all the time. He didn't always travel into the slot and things on DK. A couple of the big plays that Tyler hit, you know, were on Patrick outside. So they really play their defense. You know, most teams play their defense and they want to try to put their corner on them. And when you get a great matchup with a guy, we just have to continue to know that DK is a guy that's a special player. And try to get him the ball, try to get him involved early. He's a guy that feeds off that. You guys, I saw it. I mentioned earlier. You saw that in the San Francisco game. He catches a little 10-yard in route, and all of a sudden he's running back across the field and getting down the sideline. So there hasn't been anything that's like, oh, they're rolling everybody to him. It's a lot of them playing their coverages and him and Patrick playing one-on-one football.
Jackie.
Hey, Shadi. First off, happy birthday to your wife. That's exciting.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
What have you seen from Alex Collins and just this run game that we've had over the last few weeks?
Yeah, I think I didn't know Alex. I wasn't here when Alex was here the first time. I knew about Alex from watching Alex perform. I was in Indy. We played Baltimore, and he had a huge game against us in Baltimore. So I always knew the type of runner that he was capable of being. I thought he really played really well last game with the opportunities that we gave him. Early on, he was running hard. The perimeter run that we hit, again, Dwayne did a great job getting on the outside, securing that thing. DK was involved. The receivers were involved. But he really runs hard. With the running game, it's just kind of been hit and miss. There's been some good runs. There's been some runs that haven't really hit. And quite honestly, we want to make sure the running game's going. I've never stood up here and said we're going to throw the ball all over the yard. We think balance is important, and Alex can certainly help us do that.
If in the event that you do get Chris Carson or Carlos Hyde back this week, what can they open up for Russ in the offense?
I think there's just a comfort level playing with those guys a little bit more than he's played with everybody else. They're both great players. They're both veterans. But, in this league, nobody feels sorry for anybody. Whoever you got to play with, you got to play with. It's like you're looking at injury reports all around the league. Everybody's dealing with injuries right now. And I told the guys this, on Monday, quick turnaround. I said, hey, look, we didn't coach. We didn't perform as well as we could have played, but nobody cares. Nobody feels sorry for us that we had a bad game and didn't put up 35 points and do all those things. You got to, roll your sleeves up and get back to work. So it's part of the game. And there's been quite a few injuries this year around the league. But those guys, certainly just the boost of having more depth at that position is a good thing.
Curtis?
Yeah, Brian, with Russell, part of his brilliance is making those plays on the margins that are so close between being, great or terrible.
Right, you're right.
When he starts to cross that a little bit more frequently, like with some of the interceptions and such here the last few weeks, how do you dial that back to where you don't neuter the whole aspect, but kind of keep it back where you need it to be?
Well, I think the number one thing to say is we completely trust Russ. Russ will get through this. I really believe that. But the one thing that we did talk about, Curtis, was just simplify your thinking. There's a lot of things going through quarterbacks' minds. That's why you see these unbelievable performers have good games and bad games, and you see a Russell Wilson throw a couple interceptions, a Tom Brady, a Drew Brees, they come out and they have bad games. So simplifying your thought process. Simplifying your thought process of your progression. Simplifying your thought process of, okay, if this happens and I go to break and there's a chance for me to go run and make a bunch of yards, do that. Don't try to throw a ball back across the field and find this. So I think that's been the number one thing. There's a lot of things that those guys have to deal with. So if you can simplify your thought process, what happens is you play faster, but really, Curtis, you play more decisive. And what you see is these guys, boom, balls coming out of their hand fast because they're not trying to process everything. Well, if I go over here and I start there and they take that away, then maybe I can flip back over here. The game moves too fast sometimes, especially when you're playing teams that have good pass rushes and bring a lot of blitzes. So simplifying the thinking has been the one thing that we've talked about this week.
And last one for Shotty, Greg Bell.
Hello, Brian.
Hi, Greg.
You haven't seen this. Nobody in Seattle's seen this from Wilson since 2012. I think it's the last time he's had multiple interceptions in consecutive games. What have you noticed about him? I think I asked you this similarly last week on the plane home. This week, what's his body language? What have you noticed about him?
Motivated, anxious to get back out and compete. Nonstop worker, wanting to be coached hard, wanting to be told, hey, this has to get corrected, this has to get corrected. All those things that you would expect from an unbelievable champion, an unbelievable competitor. He's all those things, Greg. Again, we can't turn the football over. We know that. Go back to Buffalo. I took the first one. Bad call. 4th and 1. He's got to throw the ball somewhere. The 3rd and 25, he can't do that. There's really, when you deal with turnovers and interceptions, really, for the most part, There's bad decisions and there's bad throws. And everybody has bad throws. Oh, I sailed it, right? So you miss your receiver, guy gets caught. The bad decision ones where you force a ball or you throw a ball into a spot that's really not open, those are the ones you have to get rid of. And that's what's been a little bit uncharacteristic for him, like in the last game against the Rams, him throwing the ball. You just don't see him do that. So you don't worry about it because you address it, you talk about it, and he's the first one to be like, yeah, I know. I overthought that. He flashed, I thought I had him, and so I did it. So it's getting back to knowing when you make good decisions, as talented as a thrower he is, when you're making good decisions, you're not going to turn the ball over. That's why he's always had those numbers, because he's a brilliant passer, and when you're making good decisions and you're keeping a simple thought process, the ball's out of your hand and you don't put the ball in harm's way.
What do you attribute him not having or having a more complicated thought process recently?
I think he's just competing. I think that's all it is. He's just competing. We're in that game. We get sudden change. The interception to Greg Olsen, I give Williams a bunch of credit. He squatted on it. I mean, you're asking the quarterback to throw an out route, and he sees a tight end spraying for leverage. He took a shot. He took a chance, and he squatted on it. But you can't ask Russ to take a hitch and throw it later. Is he responsible for the ball? Yes, he is. That's his responsibility to determine whether he thinks Greg's open or not. But those type of plays happen. That wasn't a bad decision. That was a great play by a defender that squatted on a route, anticipated something, made a diving catch, and those things sometimes happen in football, playing this position.
All right, I'm hogging this, but one more. How does your play calling change without Chris Carson?
I don't really like the guys that are in the game. You really just try to trust the guys that are in the game, Greg. I mean, you really don't sit there and say, "Hey, who's up at tight end? Who's up at running back? Who's up at receiver?" You're always going to have your plays to try to get guys the ball. There's certain things that we like to do with Chris that maybe we don't carry in the same game plan with the other guys. Like I'm talking about play concepts that maybe we do with Chris that we haven't done, or that we do with Carlos that we haven't done. And a lot of that's because you've seen those guys. I've got years of experience with Chris now. I've seen Carlos. I've worked with Carlos a little bit longer than, say, a guy like Alex. So it's not that I'm not comfortable calling plays with these other backs. They're doing well. They're playing fine. It's just there's certain concepts that maybe you don't carry into a game because you're like, I like that play, but maybe it doesn't fit this type of runner. And yes, you are hogging the question. So
I am. Sorry, everyone. Thank you.
They're all nodding their heads.
Yeah.
Is that it? Time
That's
for
it.
one more? We good?
Brett, that's it.
Honey, happy birthday. I love you.
Jen Mueller.
Coach Norton. The Cardinals have one of the most up-tempo games in the NFL. What kind of challenges does that pose?
Well, we've fortunately we played a few teams like the Rams last week. We played the Cardinals before. We have some experience in these situations, so certainly a challenge. You have to certainly prepare you guys for it. We watch a lot of film on it, but I think it's hard to really imitate it in practice. But the fact that we've had a lot of experience with these teams and we play them twice a year in our division, I think the guys, and myself included, have a good idea what to expect.
Corbin.
Ken, you've now gotten a chance to see DJ Reed play on the outside and in the slot. Coach Carroll said yesterday that he's made some rookie mistakes his first couple of games with you, but what's been your general assessment up to this point? Where would you like to see him improve moving forward?
Well, considering our challenges and our situation, I think he stepped in and for what we asked him to do and play against some of the best athletes in the world in a position that he hadn't been played for us before. I thought he was, I thought he did very well. And he's only going to get better as he gets used to the calls, he gets used to the technique, being on the outside. It's a real tall challenge to ask a young man to play corner, play nickel, come off of IR, go right into pro football right away. That's a lot to ask, and he really stepped up to the challenge. So I'm very impressed with the fact that he was competing as well as he did.
Thanks.
Joe.
Ken, in round one against the Cardinals, Pete kind of felt like he lamented playing them straight up down the stretch and in overtime. Be wishing he would have been, you guys would have been a bit more aggressive. What is the challenge of being aggressive or deciding to play straight up against a guy like Kyler? And do you feel like you have some good takeaways from the end of that game?
There's no question there's some really good takeaways. There's a balance between being aggressive and non-aggressive. Sometimes with all our aggressiveness, they say we're too aggressive, then we pull back, then we're not as aggressive. So there's a certain balance and a certain time to do the right things. It's just everything's about timing and getting it done right and making plays. So we've certainly, I think every game that we play, every game that we lose, you learn a lot. You win games and then you learn. I think we learned a lot from playing them the first time. I'm sure they learned a lot from playing us. It was a really, really good game, and we're expecting a high competitive game this game as well.
Curtis.
Yeah, Ken, I asked Bobby this earlier, but you guys have 10 sacks over the last two games against Buffalo and LA. How much of that do you feel, looking back on it, is something that's sustainable, that's kind of a sign that you guys are progressing as a rush group altogether, and what would that do for you guys to build upon if that is something that's a little bit more regular for you guys?
Well, there's no question sacks and negative plays really help, the down and distance. Going from first and 10 to second and really long really helps you on third down. The third and mediums are really tough, so when you get third and longs after a sack in a series really helps. So there's no question about that. As far as us continuing our consistency on it, it'd be very nice. That's why we bring a guy like Dunlap in to step in and be that designated pass rusher. And then at the same time, it's important that the calls help. And our team, they play well aggressively. They respond well to it. Now it's just a matter of being able to make the plays and make sure that the high risk, high reward, it doesn't hurt us in the long run.
Michael Sean.
Ken, how have you had to adjust things in games when guys are playing out there injured? Like when Quentin was clearly hurt versus Buffalo, and Jamal said he had one arm versus whoever the Rams. Like how do you adjust when guys are out there hurting?
It's a challenge. Because a lot of times it's on the job, and we go into the week with a certain game plan and expecting certain people to be there. You get to the game, they're challenged, and the injuries it's part of the game. And I think that it's been a weird season in that way. Coming into it, we had a certain amount of guys that we expected to play and to compete for us. It didn't turn out that way. So it's been a really learning experience for myself to really kind of juggle, get guys in the right place, find out who can do what, make sure exactly we have the depth that we have. But I think all in all, very impressed with the attitude, very impressed with how hard guys play. Never in any situation, as many games that we've lost these last couple of games and the scores, they've been in it all the time. And they really believe in what we're doing. They really believe in something good is about to happen. They really believe in playing 4 quarters and finishing games. They really believe in the study and understanding the game plan. And from that standpoint, I can't ask anything more of them. But it's been a challenge to make sure the right people are in and not quite knowing who you're playing with the next week.
Who makes the call on whether to leave a guy in after he gets banged up or pull him out like you guys did, like with Quentin at the end of the Buffalo game?
That's between Quentin. That's between the trainers. If a guy can go, there's always been a place between being injured and being hurt. The player itself, he knows what he feels. He understands his body. Quentin, his situation, he's had this injury for a while now, so he knows what exactly it takes. So it comes down between the player, the head coach, and the trainer. They have to collaborate and figure out if he can do it.
Thanks.
Brady?
Hi, Ken. We've seen you guys blitz as much over the last 3 weeks as I think you ever have under Pete.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm wondering, what do you think of the job that your pass rush has done on the times where you haven't blitzed and it's just been the usual front 4?
Well, it's hard to say. A lot of times, if you have the pressure with the front 4, you don't have to bring 5 and 6. So I think sometimes when you don't have the pressure and the quarterback has the ability to sit back there and go through 1, 2, 3, 4 reads, it should be 1, 2, 1 read and he's down. We don't have that situation, so we have to put the extra pressure on him, and that's just kind of where we are right now.
And then where does Shaquem Griffin stand? We saw him play quite a bit in the Arizona game 3-4 weeks ago, whatever that was, and not at all on defense since then. Where do things stand with him?
It's everyone's competing. Griff is always finding a way to get back on the field. He's been very versatile and very important to us. And every week there's a different personality, there's a different role to be in. So every match is different. Styles make fights. And in this style, last time we played him, he fit right in because he's a guy that is very fast. He's a guy that matches the speed that they have on their side of the ball with their quarterback. So it's all about trying to find speed to match their speed on their offense.
Styles make fights. Is that a boxing term?
You know what kind of term it is.
Thank you.
Bob?
Yeah, Ken, just wondering your assessment of Snacks Harrison in his first game out. What you saw from him?
Well, Snacks is, he's a big man. He's very intelligent. We've talked about him before. He's a wealth of knowledge and information. He's been playing at a high level for a long time in his career. He's certainly key to our run defense, being able to take up a lot of space, take on blocks, and allow the linebackers on the second level get to the ball. So he's been a force, and he's helped us a lot. We have one of our strengths, of all the things that's been going on this year with the yards and the numbers and things. Our strength has been our run game. So he has been a guy who has certainly stepped in and helped us continue where we've been doing well.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you.